now we have our UI and we have some text boxes and a button that fires off an event. It's time to actually put some data in these text boxes, gather them and output them when we click the calculate. Let's just stop the application for now and let's jump back into here. So again, the most common way you're going to do this going forward is going to be an MVVM pattern, but until we get to those complexities, we'll keep it simple. We'll do this the old school way. So an old school way of doing this is in this box, we're going to name the text box and we're going to call this Celsius text. We're going to give also the text a default value of 0 for now. And you can see that update in the previewer here. And we're going to do exactly the same thing, copy and paste that into Fahrenheit. Call this one Fahrenheit text and give this one 32 Fahrenheit, I believe is 0 Celsius. And now we have the text in there. The question would be when we click the calculate button, how do we get that information? If we take a look at this example here, you can see even though the example uses slightly different UI, we've made this up as we're going. They've named the elements, put the text in, and then what we've done is we've updated the code behind, and you can see it's just available in this case as a Celsius.text because they named it Celsius. So if we go into here and we see we've named our Celsius text, which is a bit more descriptive. Technically it's Celsius text box. What it should mean is by giving this a name here, this magically then makes a property available in the code behind class. So if we go to here where we have the main Windows code behind, you should find now Celsius text appears here. So you can see there it is, and it's a text box. So it's auto linked us to being able to get access to that actual UI element, not the data, not the text, but the UI element itself. And for now, we could then say Celsius is, and what we can do is some string interpolation here, $sign at the front, inside here curly braces, and now we could say Celsius text.text. We could then also do the same for Fahrenheit. We could just put F and C for short. There we go, F and C. And that's Fahrenheit text and Celsius text. If we run this, check in the console window and bring this in. If we now click here, you can see we are pulling in the values. Now there's nothing stopping us doing this and pulling in random values at the minute. And that's something where you'd either limit the input to the text box or you'd parse when you click calculate. These are all standard software things that you would do. But for now, you can see we've managed to at least get the values into here. So next, it's fairly simple. This is nothing specific to Avalonia then. If we want to convert these values into text or report an error, first we need to decide what are we going to do if there's a problem, how are we going to kind of display or report that. We can do it with a pop-up, or we can do maybe a hidden string in the box here. So what I'm probably going to do is go into here, add a label, put the content out for, say, click calculate to calculate. That sounds after entering your values, something like that. It's, again, example application, doesn't matter too much. And we can repurpose this text box then as an error box. But first, let's just type some extra. And you can see how the text box is, or the label in this case, is going over and outside of the actual UI. Now, I don't believe a label has a wrap. It doesn't. So in this instance, because we want to wrap the text, we're going to change this to a text block, which has a few more elements, or a few more properties. Change that to text instead of content, and now we can set text wrapping to wrap. And now we can fit multi-line text on different lines of the UI. This will be relevant when we're using this for potential longer messages. Change that now back to normal. And what we can do here is we can now give this a name so we can access this in code behind, and this can be the status text. So now what we can do is set the status text instead of the console window. So in this case, let's just do StatusText.text, remember, because this is the UI element itself, not actually a string. And if we run that now, we should have the same application, but in this case with an actual value in the UI appearing. So there we go. So now we've got some UI updating when we click. And the next step is to actually calculate the values and give us the answer. Before doing the values, we need to figure out whether it is really a number or not. So for that, we could just simply do if Celsius or if int, I don't know, int 32, or in fact, we probably want to double because you can have decimals, double.TryParse. And then in here, it's expecting a text and then an out result. So we will want Celsius text.text out var c, or yeah, again, I wouldn't normally call things just so short, but we can do Celsius. And then if it isn't is what we want. So if it's not converted successfully, or if we do a double pipe, copy and paste all this, delete the extra, or we're now doing a double check, and this time we want the Fahrenheit text. Fahrenheit. What this will now do in one simple line is try to convert those text values, the string values, into real usable doubles. And if either fail, we hit here. And in which case we want to return because we failed. And what we'll do is update the status text to say, and in this case, we don't really know which one is invalid. If you wanted to do that, you'd split this up into a single call of Celsius or Fahrenheit, or you might be able to say Celsius dot equals double dot not a number, which is what I think it would be, maybe. You could say, we can prove this anyway by looking, Celsius is not a number, something like that. Otherwise, Fahrenheit must not be. So you could actually say Celsius question mark colon Fahrenheit. That's one or the other, and then dot text. And this is now complaining, so this mustn't be what we think. Fixed floating point comparison. There we go. So maybe this will work. What have I done wrong there? Spelled Fahrenheit wrong again. So that should at least detect if it's not a number, if we've done everything right there. And what we're doing is we're presuming that if the first one's failed, that would be not a number. And it might be that both of them have failed, but at least it reports in order. Let's first click, and it gives us the values. If we put that in, it's logic wrong. So where is our logic wrong? If that is not a number, Celsius. Interesting. Let's see. I would have thought that logic was the correct way around because, oh, why is that crossed out? Celsius is 0. So that's not a valid check there. So all we'll say here for simplicity, again, instead of splitting this out into two, we'll just literally say Celsius, Fahrenheit. Celsius or Fahrenheit is not a number. So simple again for our logic. The user can see which one's wrong. If you wanted more reporting, you could do it a more advanced way. But again, nice, simple application. So now if we did that, it would just report that one or the other isn't correct. The same for there. And then if they are correct, we get this. You might want one more thing, which is to maybe change the color. So you could say status text dot foreground equals, and we'll set it to red there. Now the problem with this is we're changing the visual color. So up here, every time we click it, we could set it back to black, for example. And you can see already starting to hard code UI elements and properties in the background with logic in code is why we want to go to MVVM, because this becomes hard to maintain. You get thread safety issues and other things, but you can see now we have a nice little converter for if it works or not. And the last bit is to just plumb this logic in. Now, if we get to here, we know we actually have the value. So writing this here, instead of writing that, now we want to actually write what the value is. And because in here, we want the Fahrenheit to actually be read-only, because we're going to basically set Celsius and calculate Fahrenheit, we'll go to the text box and set it as IsReadOnly to true. And then we could probably set it to IsEnabled false as well to give a very clear visual that it's not enabled. And this is a calculated value, or we could change this to a label. instead. And then it doesn't need a width. And then the content can be 32. And that should compile. Why are we not compiling? Do we have some code behind that's not working there? Probably code behind, yeah, so the code behind. So now we're not trying to convert Fahrenheit because it's calculated. That means this can be updated. That can just go for the minute. And now this should show a label. There we go. So now it shows the Fahrenheit correctly as an actual value. You could enhance this and make it so both text boxes you can enter, and whichever one was last altered becomes the one that takes priority or something similar. But for now, that's fine for us. And then this clicking now, we don't really need to output the value to here. We can purposely blank it because it was successful. And instead of then setting the status text, we're actually going to set the Fahrenheit text. So this will be the content in this case, equals, and a value for doing Fahrenheit to Celsius is this. So we now have Celsius here, which you can plumb into this formula. This gives you the Fahrenheit. And now we have Fahrenheit worked out. We can just set the content to an interpolated string of 0.0. Or rather, if we do this, colon 0.0, I believe, is the format. This should set then that text label up to the actual Fahrenheit, and that should be the true conversion. So let's see. It's already set to 32, but let's click it, and you can see you get the decimal place. Let's put, say, 10 in and click, and we now get the value converted. So now what I think we can do is just blank out this text by default. There's no real need for just generic text. It's only really going to be usable as error text. We could set the foreground to red now, clean up the back-end code a little bit by removing that and removing that, or rather that. And we could also default the Fahrenheit from 32 now to dash because it's not calculated. And with those few changes, this becomes a bit more like an actual polished application. We now have an application that opens up, we click calculate, we change the value to something that it can't, and it tells you it's not a number. We might want to also, when it fails to set in here, we probably want to purposely set the content back to a dash to clear it off. And that's it for that part of the application.